pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another page 112 tag, the book haul version. I warned you last week that I'm buying more books, so these are going to be coming not quite fast and furious, hopefully, but more regularly than before. So I have 3 new books. Hey, I'm Sean the Book Maniac, and I'm hot. I just put a steak on to broil, and I want to shoot this video and finish this video. I want to shoot a little addendum to the video that I originally filmed about a week ago, 7-8 days ago, because much has changed. As I gave a little tease the other day, I have a special guest doing one of the narrations. It's for book number 3, because I, for the life of me, couldn't do justice to that lovely text, and this famous booktuber has the perfect accent for it. Not only that, and I'm not going to reveal who she is until the end of the video. If you really are a party pooper, you can click on the link in the show notes, but I'm not even going to type her name in the show notes until a couple weeks later. So I'm just going to say guest booktuber : and then if you click on that link, but don't be a party pooper, just enjoy it. And so she's reading the page 112 from that book. And then at the very end, instead of me prattling on about what the book's about and blah, 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 she's going to give a little lovely spiel about why she thinks we should all read this book, and I think we should all listen to her. So, without further ado, here's the original introduction to the video. I have 3 new books I'm dying to tell you about, but first I'm going to, as is how the tag works, read you page 112 without telling you anything about the book, the title, or the author, give you my impressions, and then rank them and reveal the books and talk about them more at the end. Without further ado, book number 1. Still he could not look at the man behind him. His eyes were fixed on Claire's ivory body that seemed fastened permanently to the floor. The man's voice was harsh and hard, with subsiding surprise and mounting anger. "What is it, Miss Hegsick? What the hell? What's this guy done?" She did not answer. Still in her private world of shock, she moved slowly, snake-like and strangely submissive, on the floor. The man's grasp tightened on his shoulder. He shook him angrily, demandingly, as if by that action upon him Claire might be prodded into answering. "Did this guy hurt you? What the hell's going on here?" Somehow the words pierced her armor of stupor. She raised her head, looked at both of them with eyes which now were dull and opaque. "No," she mumbled. "I'm all right. Just get him out of here. Both of you. Get out of here." There was no anger in her voice, only a tired incomprehension. The man spun Arthur around until they were face to face. Arthur gazed at him disinterestedly, seeing with detachment the lifeless skin, white and dry, from which thick little bristly hairs protruded at regular spaces, microscopically precise and short and black against the pallor. The eyes which burned down into his own were large and transparent, a greenish hazel in color, slightly oblique and moist, like the eyes of a goat. "Wait," Arthur said. His voice was a harsh croak in his throat. "Just a minute. I've got to—" The man smiled, gently, almost friendlily. "No, little man, you're coming outside. With me." I didn't care for that too much. It's okay, but just okay. I find the writing is really just keeping me at a distance. I don't really like the adjectives. It's not like there's too many, but it's very Latinate writing, don't you think? Her armor of stupor, that just leaves me cold. Her eyes which were dull and opaque. I think this writing is a little dull and opaque. A tired incomprehension that just doesn't do anything, doesn't get it. It's just disinterestedly. You have no idea how many times I had to say that before I could pronounce it correctly. Disinterestedly. Detachment. Protruded. Pallor. Friendlily. I had to double check. Apparently it is a word. I've been correcting my students whenever they use it, but it doesn't roll trippingly off the tongue. No, I don't like the writing. The description of the man who looks like a goat, that wasn't bad. But these phrases, her private world of shock, I mean, it just doesn't have any visceral oomph at all to it. So, don't like it. Too bad, I just spent money on the book. And when you find out what it is, you're going to be a little surprised. Especially if you agree with me. So that's book number 1. Let's keep our fingers crossed for book number 2. I watched each car roll past, eyes behind windows, scoping out the debris from the night before. Racist graffiti painted on shutters of shops. A motorcycle passed, a bus. I looked up at the passengers, thinking about the area reflected in their faces. Neasden and its narrow lanes, the cafe by the bus garage, the old shop selling cheap toys for £1, the refuse centre by the off-license with the gate that opened slow, where vans would drive in and pile washing machines and refrigerators into stacks of rusted metal. How it had changed, shifted, and here I was, now trying to clock familiar shapes in the murk. This was an area most people wanted to pass through, innit? A place where the city's resentment collected, got into the air, the pipes, for those who lived here to live off. Cassim leaned over to me. His breath was harsh. "Yous, your mums was worried, you know. Started crying when she called us, seeing your bed empty when she woke up. How comes you never told no one you went football? It's dangerous out here, blood. Your Marge was getting ideas." I felt a slow boiling in my stomach. Who were these two to ask me this? As if I had abandoned my brother, made my mother cry. About. "This ain't the time to do that, bruv," goes Riaf, just dussing out like that. "You got a duty to your fam, get me? Especially now, what with your bro's issues and that." Riaf's hand went in the direction of my brother, talking as if he weren't there. I saw Irfan's eyes flicker up at me in the rearview mirror. He looked away just as quickly. "You deaf, yous?" came Riaf again. "I heard you," I said, my voice feeling as if it were escaping me. So, the hot take here is this didn't wow me as much as the opening page, but it did impress me a lot. The first page just stunned me, so that's why I bought the book immediately. This is a brand new release. But no, there's a lot here that I really like. I think the description of the neighborhood, Neasden, it's extremely well done, very vivid. I can picture it. I can also visualize that there's some kind of unrest or something's bad is happening or has happened in this neighborhood. How often in literature do you read about bad breath? I just thought that was such a stunning way to bring a character alive and kind of make me withdraw from him. Cassim leaned over to me. His breath was harsh. I don't remember ever reading about bad breath in literature. I love that. The idiomatic speech is interesting. I googled some of these words. I didn't find "enit," but I think it just means "isn't it?" This was an area most people wanted to pass through, "innit," but maybe somebody else. I didn't find anything, so that's my guess. But I did find some other stuff. Dussing out. Dussing means running away. Dussing out, so running away like that. I couldn't understand. How comes you never told no one you went football? Does it mean you went to the football game or you went to football practice? Or does go football, went football have an idiomatic meaning? The internet didn't enlighten me. So what else did I like? My favorite sentence: a place where the city's resentment collected, got into the air, the pipes, for those who lived here to live off. Yeah, I think it's very strong. The first page that I read on Kindle Preview blew me out of the water. This doesn't blow me out of the water, but this makes me feel like I'm not going to regret buying the hardcover of this new release. So, good. And book number 3. All right, I'm still here and I'm still hot. So, yeah, I'm not going to try and read this page 112. In the original take that I filmed, I did. But I also reached out to this famous booktuber who happens to come from the country where this book is set. Never having had any personal contact with her, I think I'd put one comment on one of her videos, and that was it. And she, while I was filming the video, she wrote back and said, I would be so happy to do this for you. So, gotta love BookTube. So here she is, and I'm still not going to identify her, and you're not going to even see her face until a little bit later in the video. Here is book number 3, page 112.
But then she heard his step in the porch. In he came and put down his gun and saw her stand there and cried out, "Damn it to hell, is that all you got to do, stand about like a lady?" So you could hardly believe there was much wrong with him then, except ill nature. He'd plenty of that. You'd no foreseeing that next morning he'd try to get out of bed and lie paralysed. So she wouldn't in a hurry forget the sight of him then, nor the run she had down Blaweary Brae, till the new nap came in sight, brave with its biggins and hoose. But there at last was Che Strachan. He was busied letting a strainer into the ground, smoking. The blue smoke of his pipe rose in the air, blue like a pencil stroke. A cock was crowing across the Denburn, and he didn't hear her cry for a while. But then he did, and was quick enough. He ran up to meet her. "What's wrang, Chris, lass?" And she told him, and he turned and ran down. "Go back to your father, and I'll get the doctor himself and send a wife up to Blaweary." And up she came, the fat, fusionless creature. All she could do was stand there and gowk at father. "Mighty me, Mr. Girthy, this is a sair sight. Whatever will you do now, eh?" And father mouthed and mooed at her for the bed, as though the first thing he'd be keen on doing was braining her. Paralysis or not, he'd plenty of rage. For when the doctor came up at last from Brevy and bustled into the room, peering and poking with his sharp, quick face of him, and his bald head shining, and snapped in his curt-like way, "What's this? What's wrang with you noo, Blaweary?" Father managed to speak out then right enough. "That's for you to find out. What the hell do you think you're paid for?" So the doctor grinned behind his hand. "One of you women must help me strip him." And he looked from Kirsty to Chris and said, "You, Chris, lass." And that she did while Mrs. Strachan went down to the kitchen to make him tea and trail around like a clucking hen. God, what mightn't be happening in Peasy's nap without her?
Well, I love that. I am completely in love with this. You can maybe guess, I won't reveal it until the end, what country this comes from or what part of the world. Some of the diction, some of the colloquialisms are a little confusing. I am mesmerized by this. Oh my God. It has a ring of kind of old writing and just the colloquialisms. I didn't look everything up, so I don't know what biggings are. Che Strawn was smoking. The blue smoke of his pipe rose into the air, blue like a pencil stroke. Mrs. Strawn? Up she came, the fat, fusionless creature. That's fantastic. The father mouthed and mowed at her from the bed. Yeah, the characters are completely compelling. It's a very dramatic scene about Chris. Chris is a woman, and it's her father that takes ill. But I want to read this right now. I loved it. It'll be a challenging read with all the colloquialisms and dialect stuff, right? But I'm ready. So those are my 3 books for this book haul, page 112 tags. What would be your most favorite, second most favorite, and least favorite? This one's not even close, but number 1 and number 2 I'm really excited about. I'm disappointed by my third pick, my least favorite, because I spent money on it the other day. Only $13, so no biggie. But my most favorite is book number 3. Oh my God, that just sucked me right in, and I loved the beguilingly unfamiliar and challenging language of it with such a musicality to it. My second most favorite is book number 2. Like I say, I was much more wowed by the introductory paragraphs that I read, but this one impressed me a lot. I'm chomping at the bit to get to it, and this one does not turn me off, but it wasn't as strong as. So the page 112 tag works, right? The whole theory is the author and the editor spend so much time on the first page, the first chapter, the first 100 pages, and then everybody slacks off. So if you really want to judge the quality of a book, go to page 112 or 150. It doesn't really matter, right? And disappointed by my third pick, book number 1. I had high hopes for it, but I didn't do the page 112 tag in the bookstore because of who the author was. Those are my picks. I'd be curious to see what yours are. And now it's time for me to tell you what the books are. My first pick is, now, did you guess the country? Well, many of you would be able to guess. I don't know that I would have. Sunset Song, and this is from Scotland, and the author is Lewis Grassic Gibbon. This one I heard about on the literary podcast Reading Envy, and the guest was Jeff Capin, and he and I have both been guests a few times on the Reading Envy podcast. And on his most recent appearance, just a couple of weeks ago, he talked about this book and completely sold me on it. So I ordered the paper copy from Amazon. And I'm going to pay $20 for the audiobook on iBooks just to help me just to enrich the experience. He raved about the audio. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to that episode with Jeff.
Now that I've told you that book number 3, Sunset Song, is my top pick from these 3, I'm going to let the mystery narrator tell you why we should all read it. And you're going to see her face, and she's going to tell you who she is. Here goes.
Hi guys, it's Leanne, and I am absolutely delighted to be here today on Sean's channel to talk to you a little bit about Sunset Song, because it is one of my favourite Scottish novels. In fact, I think it's fair to say that it's one of the most important Scottish novels which exists, and as a Scottish person, it's one of those novels that follows you around the school system. I have studied this no less than 3 times, and every time I have, I've come away with something different from it. So Sunset Song is the first part of a trilogy written in the 30s by Lewis Grassic Gibbon, and it is part of A Scots Quair, and the whole trilogy tells the story of Chris, who grows up very, very poor in a backwater Scottish farm and doesn't believe that she is going to amount to anything or ever escape from the oppressive environment around her. There is definitely a few trigger warnings in there for some of the abuse that Chris suffers, both at the hands of her family and at the wider community, because Chris is smart, and at that time in Scotland, people didn't live on farms as smart people. People didn't exist on farms as smart people. Smart people were toonies. They went to Edinburgh and they studied in college, and they were above their families, and they were very much the betters, and the two societies did not meet anywhere in the middle. And so Chris, as this intensely smart person, has this burning desire to escape everything around her, and I think anybody who loves books and anybody who's ever felt like an outsider in any way will be able to identify with Chris. But one of my favourite things about this novel is not just Chris's journey, because it is an intensely feminist tale of her bursting out of all of the things that are constricting her, and she doesn't get away lightly from that experience. But one of my favourite things is the way in which the male gaze and males are reflected in this novel, because there is a really broad, one extreme to another of what a man is and what a man is supposed to do in this novel. There's a lot of discussion in a very early way, before people really realised what it was, about toxic masculinity, and the war takes place in this novel, and men go away to war and come back very different people. Some of my favourite characters in this novel are some of the smaller side characters who are men who were farmers and who were raised to be that set kind of person, and were ripped out of their environment and forced to go somewhere else and see atrocities, and come back and go back to the farms and just accept what they'd seen and accept the changed environment of Scotland, because a lot of the wood that was required for the war came from the farms in the district where Chris grows up, and so there was a lot of deforestation, and there was a lot of Chris looking out at her environment and seeing everything change and everything be stripped back and taken away. And it's a very much a tale of the underdog and the people who are left behind while all the powers that be make decisions, and yet Chris wants to be one of the powers that be. Chris wants to get out of this backwater town and be in charge of her own destiny. And if that little bit of me waxing lyrical about it does not convince you to pick it up, then I would highly encourage you to check out one of the many adaptations that exist out there, including a film that I think came out in 2015, because it's an amazing novel. So thank you, Sean, for having me and letting me chat about that novel, and I will go and re-add it to my TBR. Thanks very much for that. Bye.
My second pick just was released like a week ago, and I can't believe that the Amazon Japan had it. In Our Mad and Furious City by Guy Gunaratney. There you can see the title. In Our Mad and Furious City. Lots of buzz about it. It's about a group of young Muslim men over the course of 2 intense days in London. A British soldier has been murdered by Islamic extremists in London, so that's probably based on the true story, and it's about the lives of these 3 men. One guy, the guy who was narrating the passage I read, his brother Irfan is caught up in the radicalism sweeping his mosque, but the 3 main characters are not susceptible to the radicalism. They're obsessed with girls and grime. Based on how amazing the opening was, and to a somewhat lesser degree how much I liked page 112, I still have really high hopes for it. The author's pretty cute. He's a writer, video artist, and filmmaker. And my third pick, you might be surprised, is by the author of one of the best novels ever written, Stoner by John Williams. This one is his debut, Nothing But the Night. So, debut, right? What can you do? His debut novel was published in 1948. And Stoner, I want to say 1960 or something, but I'm not exactly sure. It's only 117 pages, so page 112 is very near the end, but it read kind of like a pulpy pulp fiction to me. I didn't know of its existence. I have another novel by him, Augustus, and I'm aware he's written another one that's kind of like a literary western. I don't have it, but I had never heard of this, and I saw it in the bookstore and I picked it up, but I don't think I'm gonna like it. It is about a tense and listless young man who's been estranged from his father for years, but gets a letter from said father wanting to meet, and he hates his father, but feels a compulsion to meet him, and then things go downhill from there. Yeah, it sounds kind of awful. Why didn't I do the page 100? Note to self, even if the author has written one of your favorite books, you should still do the page 112 tag at the bookstore.
Alright, just to wrap up, thank you, Leanne. Thank you. You just made this a very exciting page 112 tag, and I can't wait to read the novel, and I'm going to be picking your lovely brains as I do. The rest of BookTube, how did you like my surprise? Wasn't it fabulous?
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.